Welcome back. As you guys saw last video, we went through the first round of the Women's National Championship Tournament. Now we're going to go through and we're going to talk about who we have moving on to the Elite Eight, the Final Four, and taking it all. I will go first. In the top left bracket, I have Wisconsin losing to UCLA. UCLA's got a lot going on with us just making the Final Four, so I'm riding that momentum. I got South Dakota losing to Florida. So Florida against UCLA in that Elite Eight. At the bottom left, I have Nebraska beating Baylor. And I have Rice beating Texas. So making the Elite Eight from the bottom, I have Nebraska and Rice. In the top right bracket, I have Minnesota beating Pittsburgh. And I also have Louisville beating Daytona. I keep saying Daytona. It's Dayton.
No, Daytona. I'm pretty sure it's
Louisville beating
Daytona 500.
It's Daytona 500.
Louisville beating Dayton. And last but not least, I have Oregon beating High Point. That one's going to be a barn burner. And then I have Kentucky beating Western Kentucky to make it to the Elite Eight. So my Elite Eight is UCLA, Florida, Nebraska, Rice, Minnesota, Washington, Oregon, and Kentucky. Gage, you're up.
Okay.
We'll start with the bottom. Like I said, we start with the top left of the bracket here. Wisconsin versus UCLA, with Wisconsin winning. Like I said, for the Elite Eight, that would have Wisconsin, Ohio State in it. And then for the bottom left bracket, the big Rice versus Texas game where they always get upset. But I'm gonna take them in the playoffs. It's playoff time. I think Texas can make it, and I think Texas is gonna come victorious with Nebraska and Texas on that side of the bracket for the Elite Eight. And then for the top right of the other bracket, Minnesota over Utah, Minnesota versus Washington in that bracket for the Elite Eight, or that side of the bracket. That sets up Washington State and Kentucky, with Kentucky being victorious, setting up my Elite Eight, Oregon versus Kentucky. So overall, I got Nebraska versus Texas, Oregon versus Kentucky, Wisconsin versus UCLA, or Wisconsin versus Ohio State, and Minnesota versus Washington.
So the normals. I had to throw a little wrench in there in some places, but really quickly, I'll crank through this. I got Wisconsin, UCLA in my Sweet 16. Have to go with Retke, Haggerty, that matchup. The experience, Wisconsin moving on from there past UCLA. Ohio State, Florida on the other side of there. And I had Ohio State with the upset over Florida there. Go Buckeyes. I don't know. I was just feeling it. I watched them play a little bit a couple weeks ago, and I think they have it in them. It'll be tough, but then Nebraska, Baylor. I don't know. Some of our viewers are going to be pissed. We have a lot of Nebraska people who watch. I took Baylor over Nebraska in the Sweet 16. Moving on there. And we have a lot of connections in Nebraska. We've been so, but I don't know. I had to throw a wrench in there. I had to throw a little wrench in there. Penn State, Texas. I took Texas, even though I was a little tempted to take Penn State. I don't know why, with just with their background in the tournament. But this year Texas for sure is the more dominant team. Minnesota, Utah. I was thinking of taking the upset, but I ended up going Minnesota just because they've been so dominant this season. And then Louisville, Washington. I had Washington moving on from there. UCF, Oregon. Had the Ducks moving on to the Elite Eight. And then Washington State, Kentucky. I took the Wildcats, mainly because Gabby Curry was so awesome at her takeover on our page. Probably like the best takeover on our page, so big shout out. That's probably, no, there's more reasons than that, but that was the biggest reason. So my Elite Eight, Wisconsin, Ohio State, Baylor, Texas, Kentucky, Oregon, Washington, Minnesota.
Dang. And so now that we got our Elite Eights here set up, Micah?
I have UCLA beating Florida, going to the Final Four. I have Nebraska barely beating Rice, a hot Rice team coming in, hot and sticky.
Hot and steamy.
I have Minnesota beating Louisville, and I have Kentucky beating Oregon. So my Final Four is UCLA, Nebraska, Minnesota, Kentucky.
Okay, I had Wisconsin Ohio State matchup, I went with Wisconsin. They've been freaking dominant. Like every match I watched, they just dominated teams. They're so good in the middle, and on the pins, they're pretty solid all around. So Baylor, Texas. Even though Texas has won so much, like I always get nervous taking teams that win so much against a team, especially like a playoff format, and a team like Texas, who I don't know. Gage and I, like growing up, we've seen Texas lose so many times, like late in the tournament, especially like in the Final Four, Elite Eight, and so. For me, I was really tempted to take Baylor, but I did take Texas mainly because our connection with the 808 there. Then Minnesota, Washington. I took the Huskies over. That was my big. I know. I don't know why, but I just went with it. The 6 seed over the 3 seed in the tournament. Huskies into the Final Four. And then Oregon, Kentucky actually was probably the easiest one. I don't know if we have any Oregon fans, but I took Kentucky. I think Kentucky has the easiest bracket out of any of the teams. Just looking, I just felt like Kentucky had the easiest path into the Final Four.
They got Jackson State.
That's true. I forgot about them. I forgot about that team. So my Final Four is Wisconsin, Texas, Washington, and Kentucky.
I didn't really have any kind of wrenches to throw in there. Guys are pretty. I mean, there were a few upsets, but not like by like a very low seed to a higher seed. I had Nebraska and Texas. I had Texas beating Nebraska, and then I had Oregon, Kentucky with Kentucky winning. And then on the other side of the bracket, I had Wisconsin beating Ohio State and Minnesota beating Washington. So that's up Wisconsin, Minnesota, Texas, and who was my other one?
Any analysis of your picks there?
I mean, I don't know. Like when it comes to like volleyball, in my eyes, especially like there's a lot of women's teams, way more than men's. But like in my eyes, I feel like after like the top 3 or 4, there's like different tiers to it, right? So if you're like top 3 or 4, those are the real contenders. 4 sometimes even pushing it. It's sometimes be like top 3, like the real contenders. And then once you reach about 4 through 13, those are really good programs, but some that they're missing stuff. Like they have a really good hitter, but they're just missing one thing, right? And then you got, or that can be 4 to 10, and then 10 to 20 is, in my opinion, any of those teams can beat anyone, like, you know what I'm saying? And like those teams are good, but they're not good enough to once they reach those like top tier level teams, they don't have the firepower to beat those teams. And occasionally
consistently.
I agree with that.
They can't go like 3 sets. They could maybe like get a set. They could push another set, but yeah, I know what you mean by that.
And then
that's a difference between. Not that's the only difference, but that is a difference in volleyball and basketball. It's like, there's quarters, but the score just keeps going. So you can score 40 points in a quarter and get hot, and then like kind of keep that lead. But in volleyball, you reset. So like it's kind of almost like a series in itself. So most times the better team will win. All right, so we just rounded up our Elite 8 and got to our Final Four. So now we're going to go through everybody's pick in the Final Four and then who they think's going to win. For me, I have UCLA beating Nebraska. And I have Kentucky beating Minnesota. With a final of UCLA-Kentucky and sticking to my prediction before, I think in the beginning of this show, not this show, but when we started doing our podcast, I think I chose Kentucky to win. And I'm going to stick with that.
Big picks. Wildcats. All right, I'll take the second run here. My Final Four, April Anarchy, as we claim this tournament. We need to trademark that. April Anarchy.
We have coined it.
I have Kentucky moving past the Huskies into the national championship match, and then I have Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin, if they make it past that UCLA match, I don't know why. I think the UCLA matchup could push them a little. I think once they get past there, they'll kind of roll into the national championship match. Even past Texas, I think Wisconsin just matches up better against everybody from that other side of the bracket. And I have Wisconsin winning the national championship this year, the 1 seed.
I got Wisconsin beating Texas, and then I got Minnesota beating Kentucky. So Wisconsin, Minnesota, with Wisconsin becoming victorious and the 2021 Women's National Champions.
That makes sense. That's the best pick, I would think.
As you know, subscribe, like, comment, and drop below who you think the national champion is going to be of this tournament. We're excited to see. It'll be a good week of volleyball, a good couple weeks. And, as always, go Bows.